So without further ado, I would like to introduce our two presenters today. Dr. Karen Bareford, who is a colleague and friend, is a National Water Center Extension Liaison at the National Water Center. She facilitates the delivery of information needed to support effective decision-making regarding water events and resources. Karen works for the University of Alabama in conjunction with Mississippi-Alabama Sea Grant Consortium and the National Weather Service. In addition, we have Brenna Sweetman, who is a social scientist with NOAA's Office for Coastal Management at the National Water Center in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Her work focuses on integrating social science to support sound decision-making to address coastal and water resource challenges with an emphasis on partnerships. So please give a warm welcome. And Karen, you may kick off your presentation.
Thank you so much, everyone, for allowing us to join you today. It's a real honor. And before we get started, we're actually going to turn our video off just during the presentation so that we make sure we have enough bandwidth on this side as well. We'll pop back up when we get to the Q&A time. Okay, thank you guys. And I'm going to actually hand it over to Brenna to get us started this morning or this afternoon.
Thanks, Karen. Thank you all for the opportunity with you today. We're really happy to be here and be able to share a little bit of information, stuff that we've been working on together related to water resources, and share a little bit of information relevant to you all in Hawaii. Okay, there we go. Oh, back it up. Just a quick rundown of what we plan to share today. We'll start off with the introduction. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the National Water Model. This is kind of key to the National Water Centers. We'll dive in a little to accessing the water model data and services available. I'm going to talk a little bit about the digital coast. So some of you may be familiar with this. This is within NOAA's Office for Coastal Management. And we're going to talk about some specific sources that are available on there. A new stormwater product that is about to release a version that will be relevant to you all in Hawaii. Also a risk communication literature review that was actually conducted in partnership with some of your colleagues with Hawaii Sea Grant. I'll also talk a little bit about an upcoming coastal inundation project, looking at scoping some new tools. And lastly, a project that Karen and I have been working on the last few years, the Coast Watershed Game. And so to start, we always like to begin with just some background that I think you all fully understand in this area, but something we like to acknowledge, just the importance of water in our personal lives and our global lives, right? We know that issues of too much water, too little water, water of poor quality are all increasing. This past year, it's come to light through the climate crisis on top of COVID-19, really how critical it is to invest in climate adaptation and water security, right? These issues are increasing in frequency and severity and becoming more and more urgent. And so really as a result, at NOAA, we're striving to focus on advancing the science, service, and stewardship to help better develop and deliver water information and services to meet and support the evolving needs of society. And with that, I'll turn it to you, Karen.
Okay, so I'm going to dive into a little bit more technical information for you, not too technical, but about as technical as we're going to get today. I want to talk to you about how our weather forecast, water forecasts are actually created, and then a little bit about the National Water Model. Traditionally, forecasts in the United States, we actually have 13 different river forecast centers. And those river forecast centers are the ones that actually provide guidance to our 122 local weather forecast offices around the country. Those weather forecast offices then use the information provided by those river forecast centers to issue the official river forecasts, watches, and warnings that most of you will pick up on your local weather station and even from your meteorologists and those sorts of things. Now, traditionally, the forecasts that you see have been created specifically for about 3,600 locations across the country. Many, almost all, but not all of those actual locations are locations of USGS stream gauges. Now, what the National Water Model does is it's a high resolution hydrologic model that provides estimates of existing conditions and forecasts of key components of water. And it was actually developed by the National Weather Service Office of Water Prediction and a few key partners. It utilizes a variety of meteorological inputs along with environmental data and observations. And what it does is it actually forecasts stream flow at nearly 5 million miles of rivers and streams across the US. The model provides this hydrologic guidance. The way that it does it significantly expands the geographic coverage of what has been available and also offers a higher spatial and temporal resolution than other tools. Because of these things, it offers a unique and very complementary tool to the existing tools that the weather forecast centers and the weather forecast offices use to create those forecasts and warnings and things that you all get. So what many people don't realize is that the National Water Model is actually accessible to anybody that has a computer and an internet connection. You can access most of the information that is available from the water model via the web page that you see across the top of the screen right now. If you put that web page in, what you're going to come to is this landing page that you see the image down below. This landing page actually offers a veritable plethora of information, not only about the water model itself, but it talks about what drives the model as well as the different configurations and outputs, etc. You'll notice that right now on your screen, there's a drop down right here. If you left click on that visualization drop down, this is what's going to come up. And you can actually look at the map viewer, image viewers, and then also additional information about what's new. But I want to give you an opportunity to kind of dig in and see what's available and talk about how you get to these things. Now, first of all, the National Water Model actually provides 4 levels of guidance. First, it provides an analysis and assimilation. And that analysis and assimilation is a representation of the current conditions that are existing. It is produced on an hourly basis, and it can be used to anticipate future possible threats, immediate threats like flash flooding, or to inform situational awareness. The next is the short range forecast, and that's going to actually provide information about what might occur over the next 18 hours. It is also produced on an hourly basis, so it's reproduced every hour. And it can be used to look at other possible future threats. The medium range forecast is actually looking out at what might happen in the next 10 days. It is produced every 6 hours, and it's really good for things like potential future riverine flooding. Now, the long range forecast is actually providing guidance that's looking out 30 days. It's only produced once a day, but it can really be used to look at relative wetting and drying trends, which can really help when we're looking at the signals for things like water supply and agricultural needs. Now, when you go to the map view, this is an image of what you might see. Now, what you're actually looking at here are flow lines for specific streams and rivers and certain segments of those. The thickness of those lines are going to indicate the order of the stream, and the color is going to indicate the potential flow, the flow of that forecast. The warmer or more red colors are going to indicate a larger amount of flow. Now, one thing that's interesting, when you first zoom into this, it's going to zoom into a full extent of what we call CONUS, the continental United States, but you can zoom in and move around. And I just wanted to show you, this is an image that I actually pulled off just a couple of hours ago. And you can actually zoom in all the way down to one particular segment of any one of those pieces that you see right here. Now, this is the map viewer. And, but let's talk a little bit about the image viewer. And this is where so In addition to the map viewer, there's the image viewer, and the image viewer actually will allow users to see specific images or visualizations of each of these different conditions that are listed on the left-hand side, and then how those conditions will change over time. And again, if you'll think back, remember the analysis and assimilation forecast is looking over the last few hours to tell us about current conditions right now. That short range forecast is looking out over the next few hours, next 18 hours. The medium range forecast is looking out for 10 days, and then the long range is 30 days out. So each of these different parameters can be seen for each of those different configurations. Now, a static image is a snapshot in time, and a visualization will actually show changes over that specified period of time according to what forecast you're looking at. The one thing I want you to just kind of realize is that just similar to the map viewer, you can actually zoom in and see much more detail, even more so than what you saw earlier. So I wanted to dive into each of these just a little bit more so that you can kind of get a better idea of what each of these shows. Your near surface soil saturation is actually going to show a snapshot in time about the water in the soil at the time that that configuration was run. Now, this is available at Hawaii, at both the analysis and assimilation and the short range forecast. Your precipitation is actually showing the expected accumulation of rainfall, and it's going to actually help to know how much water is going to be added into the system and where that might happen. Again, this for Hawaii is available both in the analysis and assimilation and in the short-term forecast at this point. Your stream flow actually shows how that expected precipitation will flow for each of those different stream sections. And again, you can come down into very specific stream segments within that. Each of these images that I'm showing you, I took off of there earlier today. So it kind of should resonate a little bit about your existing conditions, not what you've seen over the last month or so. And finally, we also have this product called Streamflow Anomaly. And that's going to actually use calculations to determine what normal flows for each river segment would be, and then define whether the predicted stream flow would be normal, below normal, or above normal. Now, unfortunately, this is currently not available in Hawaii or for Hawaii, and this is why I'm showing you an image of the west coast of the continental United States. But in the future, we do anticipate with future versions that will be available. Also wanted to just make sure that you all realize that there is a raw data output for the National Water Model, which is a 2-day rolling window of the most recent raw water model output. You can actually access that. Again, you need a real power user. I understand that some of you probably fit that bill, so wanted you to know that you can actually go in and download. Now, at this point in time, you're actually downloading all of the outputs, so these are huge files. But another thing that's really interesting that is available is what's called the retrospective run. And the retrospective run actually goes back and is a retrospective analysis of the actual conditions. Right now, what's available today is over the last 25 years. So you can actually go and see what has happened in the last 25 years, which might be really useful for some of the research that some of you all might be doing. The one caveat that I want to say on the retrospective run, a new version of the model was actually just released yesterday. With that new version, which is version 2.1, there will be available a retrospective run for 40 years. Now, it's not there yet, but that's coming down the pike as well. So just a little something that might help some of you all out. Now, for me as a social scientist, I'm always thinking about, okay, so what? Why is this important and how does this help us? And what this type of information really does is it shows us how water and the impacts of weather are going to cascade across a region or basins in the United States. The guidance that is provided about how water can be expected and when and how it's likely to flow will actually improve our integrated understanding of the U.S. water resources. And hopefully it will also provide some additional information even in Hawaii that might not be currently available. It enables the communities to make more informed decisions about what actions to take and when to prepare and protect their citizens and infrastructure. So this is one more tool in the toolbox, but like I said, it offers at resolutions and scales that we haven't previously had access to. Now, the water model is every single version goes through extensive validation and verification, and that validation and verification is actually used to make future improvements as well. As I mentioned, version 2.1 was just released yesterday. It actually expanded the model to Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, as well as a greater coverage of the Great Lakes Basin. In addition, all of the things that I showed you today were available in version 2.0, but version 2.1 significantly is improving the performance that you will see in Hawaii. So that's great news for you all. In about 2023, we're actually expecting version 3.0 to come out. That will actually expand the model to include Alaska. It will also debut total coastal water, which really accounts for the conditionings coming from both upstream, including precipitation and those sorts of things, as well as offshore, to predict the total levels of water that can be expected in these really complex coastal regions. With each state update, the forecast accuracy of the model also improves greatly. Now, I've thrown a lot of information at you, and so I just want to let you all know that actually very recently, back in October, we released an extension publication that kind of walks through a lot of what I told you today. You can see it in writing and refer to it that way if you want. This is available online. The second link at the bottom is directly to that publication. If you have any trouble finding it, please reach out and we'll get that information to you. But for now, I want to turn things over to Brenna and let her talk about a variety of other tools that might be of interest.
Thanks, Karen. All right, so I think some of you might already be familiar with NOAA's Office for Coastal Management's Digital Coast website, but for those of you who might not be, I'll just share a quick background. It is both a website and a partnership, and really it's kind of one of the key coastal management initiatives within my office. And you can kind of see here a sampling of some of the resources available there. There's a variety of data, tools, both online and in-person trainings, as well as stories from the field or kind of case studies, all designed to help coastal managers address their challenges that range from supporting healthy coastal ecosystems, coastal communities, and coastal economies. But in addition to this website, it's also an enabling platform. And really something that a lot of folks don't realize is behind the web presence is a partnership with 7 national organizations. Some of these you might be familiar with, like the Nature Conservancy, the Association of State Floodplain Managers, the American Planning Association, as well as some others. And these are really kind of the groups guiding the information and resources to ensure that what's available on this website and platform is both relevant and supporting the coastal management community. So I encourage you all to go ahead and explore the website. Here's just a sample of some of the questions that could be answered with resources here, ranging from, what's sea level rise going to look like in your community, or maybe you're kind of more interested in the data side of things and want to understand land use, land cover change. You can explore some of the geospatial and LiDAR data available. Or perhaps you want to try to estimate the marine economy in your area, right? So here's just kind of a little sample of some of the breadth available on the digital coast. In addition, I wanted to just highlight some of our top products. You might be familiar with these, but the Sea Level Rise Viewer has become available in the last few years for Hawaii. We also have the Historical Hurricane Tracks, which kind of looks at some previous hurricane records. the Coastal Flood Exposure Mapper, which shows FEMA's flood maps along with some social vulnerability data for kind of a more holistic picture of flooding impacts. And we also have the Coastal County Snapshots and the Coastal Inundation Toolkit. So these are some of the most popular ones, and I will talk in a little bit later on kind of some of our thoughts on reworking and revisioning these. But just kind of wanted to acknowledge that these are, you know, some of the visualization as well as analyses tools that you could definitely check out on the website. And in addition, one of the products I wanted to highlight here is a new tool. And technically it's not a tool, it's actually listed under the training section of the Digital Coast website. It's more of a self-guided learning resource. And so this product, Adapting Stormwater Management for Coastal Floods, was developed based off a series of needs assessments with our partners, the American Planning Association, a variety of floodplain managers. We worked with them and said, hey, what are your greatest air quantity challenges right now? Where are the gaps? What do you need help addressing? And what we heard from folks was they didn't want another tool. There were plenty of tools out there. They really wanted help understanding existing tools, as well as addressing the gap of combined flooding. So when there's riverine flooding and storm surge, and how to tackle the challenge of stormwater management. And so this is kind of how this product came about, and it's really designed to help understand, you know, when and where you might expect to see issues within your stormwater management system in your community. And so as I mentioned, really it's self-guided, and so you can kind of walk through, understand the issue. We've got some interactive graphics here like this one where you can visualize, well, what happens when there's storm surge on top of a heavy precipitation event, for example. We also have a section that goes through an assessment and an analysis, kind of more into the technical details if you're really hoping to calculate coastal total water levels and kind of come at it from that engineering perspective. And then we also have a take action section which provides resources on next steps. Well, here you kind of better understand the issue, what can you do about it? And so we provide links to different funding sources as well as case studies of what other communities have done to try to address this issue. And as I mentioned here, we're actually in the throes of going to be releasing the version 2 of this product next month. And this will actually include Hawaii, and there's going to be some great enhancements to the analyze section as well. So if this is a challenge in your community, I invite you to take a look at this website and explore it. Hopefully within the next few weeks or so, it will be included for your region. And another product I wanted to touch on here, transitioning, was actually a literature review, which was conducted in partnership with the NOAA CERST program. We had an intern, Carla Lopez. We also worked with Hawaii Sea Grant, Katie Hinson and Melanie Lander, along with some other Sea Grant partners in Mississippi, Alabama, and North Carolina. And we kind of all came together and said, hey, what's already been done to understand risk communication, specifically for sea level rise with underserved communities? So we worked with our intern, Carla, and she pulled together this literature review of best practices. You can kind of see some of them highlighted here, you know, and really we've kind of pulled all that together, hosted on the Digital Coast website. And now we're kind of moving into the second phase of working with our partner programs to understand and kind of ground truth these best practices that we gathered to work with a local community and really conduct some on-the-ground engagement related to sea level rise risk. Another project I wanted to touch on here, as I mentioned earlier, there's kind of the acknowledgement that there's a lot of tools out there, especially when it comes to coastal flooding. And so within the National Ocean Service, my office, the Office for Coastal Management, is working with NOAA's co-ops office, so also known as Tides and Currents. They also have a variety of different high tide products and coastal analyses tools. And so we are kind of in the throes of initially trying to understand, well, we have a variety of tools out there. We've heard repeatedly that there are too many tools. There's decision support tool fatigue. And so we're hoping to try to vision some products that will kind of reduce redundancy and really try to assess, well, what could these combined products look like? What would be most useful without being too complex? How can we create something simple and straightforward and really meet our user needs? In addition, we also hope that this will address future flooding, kind of looking at climate timescale, so a longer issue, to better understand coastal, to better wrap our heads around this topic as well. And then lastly, I wanted to highlight an effort that Karen and I have been working on in partnership the last few years with colleagues up in Minnesota Sea Grant. And so the Watershed Game is actually a program that started with Minnesota Sea Grant over 10 years ago. And it really is kind of a large format board game, a non-traditional tool that's designed to educate and engage communities on land use and water quality impacts. And so there's been freshwater versions, a river, lake, and stream model, but most recently we've been working to address the gap and develop a coastal model. And so we've been working with our partners here and are now in the exciting near final steps for the development of this coastal version. And so it'll be in a local leader version designed for use with adults, you know, elected officials, other folks who might be interested in engaging with adult community members. Now there's also a classroom version designed for use with youth, both in formal and informal classroom settings. And some unique features of this coastal version is that we've expanded it to include nitrogen, which was not previously incorporated. But in addition, you can also incorporate phosphorus or sediment depending on your issue of interest with your community. And then we've also added the element of coastal resilience. And so we're kind of trying to have this two-sided educational objective here to address both water quality as well as coastal resilience to flooding, including both sea level rise and storm surge. And so we're really excited to start to figure out, one, how to adapt this to the virtual environment potentially, and then two, also start to host some virtual trainings later this year where we're start to roll out the coastal version and share that with potential community members also. And so with that, you know, we just wanted to share, you know, this is just an introduction to some of the resources we thought might be relevant for you all. We've added links here, so please feel free to go ahead, check out, explore these on your own time. And please reach out to us if you have any comments, questions, feedback on anything. If anything we've shared with you today is of interest, we would love to hear from you and really appreciate you all taking the time to join us today. With that, we will go ahead and pause here and welcome any questions.
Thank you again, everyone, for your patience with our technical difficulties as well.
Thank you so much, Karen and Brenna. I really appreciate your presentation. I found it very fascinating. And it's good to kind of have a rundown of all the tools that are available to folks. I'll start with a question, if you don't mind. Do you have an example of sort of, for lack of a better word, like a success story where a community used one of the resources that you presented on and, you know, there was a positive outcome? So, you know, maybe it reduced stormwater flooding, or they were able to map coastal flooding a little better or something, or the water model, you know, help someone get out of danger or something. I was wondering if you could kind of share those real world situations.
Yeah, I can go ahead and start and you can jump in, Karen. You know, the stormwater product, we kind of pulled that together and we're trying to figure out, okay, we took all this information, is this actually going to be relevant? And then I was actually in North Carolina delivering a social science training, and someone came up to me and said, hey, you know that product that you mentioned on adapting stormwater management for coastal floods? We've started to use that in our community and have found it super useful. And that was kind of my first experience of saying, wow, yeah, you know, we kind of took the time to develop this thing, and then it actually was relevant to a North Carolina community that was really struggling with trying to even figure out how to tackle that issue. And they kind of learned that, oh yeah, you know, EPA has grants for this. Some other organizations have ways to address this. And it kind of was able to break it down into bite-sized pieces for them. So that was the first that came to my mind there.
Yeah, I think one of the great examples with the National Water Model is that while they're still really working to dial that in, if you will, what it does a great job of right now is actually indicating when there might be an influx or some sort of event. And so it can flag that multiple days in advance, sometimes even over a week. There was actually indications on the National Water Model that there was going to be a very heavy event before Harvey, which was what, 3 years ago now. And so the other thing that the National Water Model is really great is that we have areas, especially in our coastal regions, because of the traditional way that forecasts are run, which was from the specific gauge points. So we had what we called hydro-blind areas that were not able to actually have information available. And so now then that the water model is actually looking at river and stream segments, there's areas where we're getting information that we have never had it before. And so I think that's another one that's really critical. I also just want to tell you guys, we're sorry, we're having difficulties on our side now because we can't get the video to come back up after we lost you all. So I apologize that we're not on video.
No worries. I just appreciate you sticking around and answering questions. You know, we have a decent sized group, and I think it'd be okay if someone had a question, feel free to unmute and ask your question. Otherwise, you're able to type your questions in the chat box. We probably have about, we could do another 10 minutes of Q&A or a little longer if need be. You were mentioning 2.1, right, was going to be coming. Well, there's improvements to Hawaii, but can you kind of tell us, like, what are some of the challenges to institute the model in Hawaii? You know, we know we have a unique geology, topography, short coastal zone. Are kind of all those considered when the model is put together?
I think that that's really kind of the beautiful thing about the model. The concept is from the time precipitation hits the ground, the model is tracking, or is meant to track. Right now, it's really what it's doing is tracking the flow of water over the top of the land. Where they eventually want it to go is to get more into the groundwater and understanding the percolation through the groundwater and how that's going to occur. They're not there yet. One of the pieces that was that recently has happened is they have gone in and taken some very complex areas, think built up cities like a Houston or a New York or something like that, and tried to go in at a much higher resolution and understand what's happening with the water in those areas. As you can imagine, I mean, we all know, as you know, we put in pervious surfaces and we change the landscape, water moves differently. And so if you can use the WAT model and go in and much better understand what's happening in some of these complex environments, it's going to help then with better predicting in the future. And so that's one thing that they've been working on. It's so yes, that topography and those sorts of things, it's looking at those at this point. Again, the groundwater can be really complex. I have spent most of my career, I was working and living in Florida, which is a karst environment. And that's an area where the National Water Model doesn't work very well because they haven't figured out how to actually model that well at this point. And so that's an area that they know they need to address, and they're trying to kind of figure out. So there's a long range plan, which definitely does include trying to understand better that the groundwater, and that will also help to predict things like drought and those sorts of things. But when you consider how far they've come in less than 5 years, it is pretty amazing that now then we do have Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands are in at this point. The Great Lakes Basin was a complex area where they had some troubles that they've really made some great advances on. And then knowing that Hawaii is going to finally come in that version 3.0, which is hopefully going to be released in 2023. So lots of headway, but still a lot to learn.
Thanks. I have another I have a question for Brenna. In terms of social science aspect, what are some of the concepts that you're using to kind of improve people's understanding of the tools or usage of the tools? Or is that something that is that even in your wheelhouse, I guess?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that, because I've recently been trying to do some investigation on that as well, because there's so many just elements of when someone is clicking on something, are they even aware of whether it's user friendly or not? And so one thing I've kind of been exploring recently is trying to just like watch people interact with the website and see, where do they get stuck and what might be confusing, and try to kind of, walk through it with them one-on-one. That's one thing that comes to mind. But then also, just asking people in general, like, is this helping you meet your needs? And a lot of times there's just so many tools out there, is what I've heard again and again and again. And so I think the direction to go is simplify. If a tool becomes antiquated, retire it. Or if it's time to start to think about something new, also be okay with moving in that direction. So when I think about social science and tools, I think it kind of involves being open-minded to, is it both usable, but also is it still needed? And kind of thinking about it from a perspective of how do we continue to, stay relevant and keep information both useful without kind of overwhelming the tool space.
I'll jump in. An interesting thing that some research that has been done. There's actually a faculty member here at University of Alabama who's in the School of Journalism and Creative Media, has been doing some research actually following people's eyes on computer screens when it comes to the release of warnings and watches and some of that information, to better understand what they're looking at and how they're comprehending it. And so I think there's some very new stuff that's out right now that people are trying to better understand. How we want to understand how people process and hear the watches and warnings and the risks that we're trying to talk to them about. And so I think that this is going to, I don't want to say it's going to blow up. I think there's going to be a lot more information that's going to be coming available in the next 5 to 10 years. It's just such a important place, because we have a lot of really technical information that can help to predict and forecast things. And we're really trying to perfect that. But until we can find a way to get information to people in a way that they can and will use it, it doesn't matter how good we get as scientists at producing those models, until we can get people to act in a way that will help to reduce their likelihood of being harmed. So we're pushing that.
Thanks. I don't have any other questions in the chat. I can, I'll ask again. If anybody else has any other questions, feel free to, you may unmute yourself, or if you'd like to type them in the chat, that is acceptable as well. We have a comment, Barry Usagal from BWS. Great NOAA tools and apps. Thank you. Thanks, Barry, for the comment.
Thanks, Barry. One thing what we'll mention to you guys as well is that, we talked to you about a few things that were, underway or just now being released. If there's any of these particular efforts that you're particularly interested in, engaging with people on the ground that are either, using these models to do research, if there's ideas that you have that you might want to use the National Water Model, we'd love to work with you on that. If you're interested in some of these other projects that we're working on, please reach out to us and we'll make sure that you get invitations to engage with us when that time comes, because there's going to be definitely engagement opportunities, not only with the risk communication piece, the stormwater flood inundation stuff, as well as with the watershed games. So that's kind of our bread and butter is actually working with those of you that know these areas most intimately and that live in these communities and can help us to better understand how we can improve things.
Yeah, the interface is especially important. I don't know. Well, I guess with that, we could wrap up. Give you back some of your Friday evening on the East Coast. Thank you both for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to present. It's always wonderful to have a diversity of folks presenting on a myriad of things that we've covered this semester. So this is just another amazing presentation. Thank you.
Thank you all for letting us join you on this afternoon out there, and hopefully one of these days we'll be in the same city for something and be able to share a beverage or a meal. So thank you very much.
Mahalo. And thanks everyone for joining us.
All right, good night. Thanks.
Aloha.